Hey, gang, this week's episode is brought to you by oldschoolshirts.com. Hey, check them out. You like defunct teams and leagues and t-shirt form? Well, you'll find them there, but a whole bunch of other stuff, too. Do you remember a radio station of the past or perhaps a mall that you used to go to? All kinds of great cultural and sports memories can be found at the great folks at oldschoolshirts.com. Promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. And now, here's our show.
Live from the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, ABC's NFL Monday Night Football, the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Houston Oilers. This ABC Sports exclusive is brought to you by Buick and your local Buick dealers, who invite you to stop in and see all the new Buicks now during their holiday get-together. And by Light Beer, everything you always wanted in a beer and less.
What a scene set. We don't have to get geared up for tonight. We've been waiting for it for a long time. The Steelers at 11-3. The Oilers at 10-4. What a rivalry. Remember the showdown in the playoffs last year when Mike Wagner was accused of a cheap shot against Mike Barber? That's the feeling between those clubs. It wasn't a happy occasion, but it's the way it was. Frank and I did a Monday night game at Three Rivers last year, won by Houston over the Steelers. That takes some doing. And then the Steelers won here and won in the playoffs. But these are two great teams, and for the beginning of the storyline tonight, let's go to my colleague of 9 years, himself as excited as when he played at USC, Frank Gifford.
9 years, seems like only yesterday. Storyline for the Houston Oilers, I think, is quite simple. For their fans, for the team, for anyone who knows this game, that is to keep the football away from the number one offense in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The way you do that, you get a good rushing performance out of maybe the best running back in football today, and that, of course, is Earl Campbell. But Earl Campbell's had his problems against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are number one in the entire league against the rush. Earl Campbell, in his attempts against Pittsburgh thus far in his 2-year career, has never been able to manage a 100-yard game. This should be quite a football game, and Fran, this is like high school, college football all wrapped into one.
Frank, this is wild. There's so much energy here tonight, and guess who's really on the spot? It's Dan Pastorini, the quarterback of the Oilers. Why? Because Houston doesn't run the ball well against Pittsburgh, and they like to give the ball to Earl Campbell at least 36% of the time to run, and he doesn't run very well against him. So Pastorini has got to throw the ball tonight. And, of course, on the other side of the fence, you've got Terry Bradshaw, who is now a truly great quarterback, having another outstanding year. So you've got to figure that he's going to be putting points on the board for the leading offensive football team of the National Football League. Okay, Frank.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. How's it going? My name's Tim Hanlon. It's Good Seats Still Available. As you know by now, it's the curious little podcast that's devoted to what used to be in professional sports. Thank you for finding us. And we love you for listening. And we also love you blue this week. As our special guest is Dan Pastorini, the iconic quarterback, synonymously known, alongside the Houston Oilers, the team that preceded the Texans down there and emanated from the AFL, the American Football League, and was, especially in the 1970s, especially the latter part of that decade, a phenomenon in the National Football League. And you heard that in not so many in great tones there by Messrs. Frank Gifford and Fran Tarkenton and the inimitable Howard Cosell from a Monday Night Football game on December 10th, 1979. That's where that clip came from. And you could hear in the stadium, in the Astrodome, the iconic Astrodome, just the enthusiasm behind and for that Houston Oilers franchise, who were amidst a hell of a run that almost got them into the Super Bowl. But we'll talk about all of that drama, that ramp up people like Bum Phillips and Earl Campbell and Curly Culp and so many others that Dan Pastorini was amidst. And in that game in December of 1979, that was a Steelers-Oilers rematch if you will. You may remember that the Oilers and Steelers locked horns in the 1978 AFC Championship game. Actually, it's in 1979, earlier that year in January of 1979. And the Oilers, in just a terrible weather up in Pittsburgh, it was cold and raining and just the sleet and stuff. They didn't do all that well. But the Oilers certainly had made a statement in that 1978 going into 1979 season. And can you imagine in December of 79 during that game, which the Oilers wound up winning by, I think, about 5 points, maybe 3, I forgot. But it was a tremendous win at home for the Oilers. But little did they know, or perhaps it was inevitable, that both of those teams would meet once again in the AFC Championship game a month later, that being on the 6th of January, 1980. And man, that game probably will go down as one of the most controversial calls in a playoff game in NFL history. And we'll have a little clip of that and discuss that more with Dan in our conversation coming up. But you could say that a touchdown was made by the Houston Oilers that was not granted. It was the days before, not before instant replay was available, but before instant replay was a component of the official doings of the game. And you'll hear that a little later on and as we talk about that. But suffice to say, that was probably one of the major ingredients in the NFL eventually, although it took maybe another decade or so. But it was definitely one of those events that was referred to on a regular basis as to why instant replay needed to be incorporated into the game. But oddly, though, and interestingly, coming out of that game was a wellspring of enthusiasm for this team. When the team came back, and we'll talk about this with Dan too, the Houston Astrodome was packed to the gills with thousands outside and then some to welcome them back. And they had lost the AFC Championship game, being one game short of the Super Bowl. That's how much the Houston Oilers and the city and the metropolitan area of Houston became so intertwined in that period of time. And the cog that made all of that go was our guest this week, Dan Pastorini, the amazing quarterback who took all kinds of flack, literally and figuratively, for this team. And there's another contribution that Dan was part of, not only that instant replay phenomenon from the AFC Championship game in 80, but also this thing called the Flak jacket. And it is something that Dan helped pioneer when he was getting his bell rung, shall we say, on numerous occasions in the early part of his career with the Oilers, when they didn't have any offensive line to protect him, breaking ribs and stuff and all that. And we'll talk about the development of that in our chat. But as we do so, as we get you ready for that, I highly recommend Dan's book. It came out about 10 years ago, and it was re-released. I think it was re-released 2 years ago or last year or something like that. It's called Taking Flak, Flak, Life in the Fast Lane. And it is a hoot of a read. It traverses Dan's 13-year NFL quarterback career, most of it and most synonymously with the Houston Oilers, of course, but also a touch with the Los Angeles Rams, and prior to that, the Raiders for a season, a controversial trade between the Raiders and Houston after that early 1980 playoff loss, where Ken Stabler came to the Oilers and Pastorini went to the Raiders. And of course, those teams met up in the next season and stuff, and that makes for interesting times for sure. But this book is a great read, and I'm only new to it as of a couple of weeks ago. But after having read it, I said, man, I got to get Dan on the phone and let's get a conversation going. And that's what we've got for you this week. But you can get a copy of Taking Flak, Life in the Fast Lane, wherever good books are found. It is universally loved on Amazon and every place where you can rate it. So it's I'm not just the only one saying that. And the best way, of course, for you to get that book and giving us a few shekels of referral love when you do so is to go to our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Just search up this episode numbered, what is it now? 392 392 of these, unbelievable. And you'll be whisked away to Amazon to get either the hardcover or the paperback. I think that's the one that just recently got re-released, as well as, or instead of, the Kindle version. Any of those versions of this book, and you'll get this book as fast as humanly possible. And a lot of great stuff to talk to Dan about. And one last thing, I'll also point you to, and I can vouch for this because I've tried the product and have it in my home. Dan Pastorini's got these amazing seasonings and rubs for your barbecue efforts. It's Dan Pastorini's Quality Foods. His website is dpqualityfoods.com, DP as in Dan Pastorini, dpqualityfoods.com. And the garlic and herb or the Texas style rub, you got to get yourself some. Like I said, I have it at home. I love them both, but I think that I'm a little partial to the garlic and herb only because that's the one that I tried first. But the Texas style rub is pretty darn good too. And just check that out there. We get no referral love for that, but you will get some love for your taste buds by checking that out as well. More promotional stuff to come at the tail end of the show, but let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the conversation with the great Dan Pastorini. We're going to be talking about the Houston Oilers largely, but Dan's had a crazily intriguing career, not just in the NFL, but also outside of it. And we'll talk a little bit about some of his B-movie performances, some of them with his then wife, the voluptuous June Wilkinson from back in the day, a little bit of race car driving in the midst of all that stuff. And he's also a volunteer and does a lot of great work in the Houston area too. So much to talk about. Let's get right to it. Here's our conversation. Please, as always, enjoy. Before we get into your, the Oilers stuff and the NFL stuff and all that kind of, I want to love to get a little bit of a sense from where your headspace was when you were just young Dan Pastorini at esteemed liberal arts Jesuit Santa Clara in California, not necessarily known as a football power per se, but I guess I'd love to get some sense as to how you become a football player and or your sense that not only you're good, but you're talented enough to get to that next level, especially at a college that not known necessarily for its prowess on the gridiron.
Very true. I think Pat Malley had brought back football to Santa Clara in the mid 60s, early 60s. And my brother played for him. And my brother was a 5'9", 198-pound guard and linebacker, middle linebacker, as a matter of fact. And he made Little All-America, consensus Little All-America, first team, his junior and senior year.
Was that NAIA? Is that or Division III, or what is that?
Small colleges. That's the way they classified it back then. We didn't have divisions or all this other fancy stuff that's going on now. And I remember one time my brother was really sick, and he wanted to play, and shows up at the locker room, and now he threw him out. He says, "Your well-being is more important than this win," and he said, "I'm not going to sacrifice that for a stupid win." He said, "We can get all kinds of wins." He said, "We only have one life." And that left a very lasting impression on me of what kind of man he was. And then I wound up going to Santa Clara. I was offered many scholarships around the country, pretty much everywhere. But Santa Clara was one of the only schools that would let me play both baseball and football. And I wanted to play baseball and football because I was drafted by the New York Mets in 1967 out of high school as a shortstop, but they wanted to make me a pitcher, and I was a good hitter. And I said, I remember talking with the scouts, and they were really putting a hard sell because they came up to Sonora, California. And we were in the kitchen of my father's restaurant, and they were hell bent on signing me for my arm strength. I said, "I appreciate that, but I said I like to play every day, and I'm a pretty good hitter." They said, "Yeah, we know, kid, but we want you for your pitching strength." I said, "Well," and I had pitched a little bit, kind of late games. We didn't have any pitchers in the bullpen, so I pitched a little bit, and then I turned them down, And then the next year, the 1968 amazing Mets win the World Series, or the 69, I guess. I can't remember which. But they had a couple guys pitching by the name of Nolan Ryan and Tom Seaver. And I thought to myself, wow, I could have been in that rotation. But all through college, I was injured quite a bit. We didn't have much of an offensive line. In fact, I was bigger than most of my offensive linemen, but they did the best they could. And unfortunately, the first snap of my junior year or sophomore year, and Bobby Ricard and I were quarterbacks, and we were going to platoon, and because of my inexperience. And I fumbled the first snap from center, and a guy hit me on my ankle and broke my ankle. So that put me out for half the season. Came back, played a little bit more. Then my junior year, we played Villanova at a homecoming game. We had them as homecoming, which was really stupid. And Villanova was a pretty good powerhouse. And I tore my medial collateral ligament and played the game, finished the game and everything, and had a pretty good statistical game. But, we lost 55-7. So next year, senior year, same thing. We go back to New York. And we played Villanova. We stayed in New York and played Villanova, and same exact injury to the other knee. So I'm sitting out that season, my junior year. Now I'm kind of going, what's gonna happen? I don't know what's gonna go on. And so I was kind of concerned about it. And then I was fortunate enough to play the last 3 games of the year, I think against Humboldt State, Long Beach State, and UC Santa Barbara, and had good games. I think we won 2 of the 3. And then I was selected to play in the East-West Shrine game. And I think that was because of the scouts wanting to see me play against big competition, because Santa Clara, as you say, was a small college and wasn't a very impressive football university.
How common? I'm sorry. How common was it for these smaller colleges to get the call up for the East-West Shrine game, which, by the way, was I think back in at that time was really in your backyard, right? Wasn't it at Stanford, or somewhere in the Bay Area?
Yeah, we at Stanford. We played. Yeah, I think we did play at Stanford, or no, we played in the Coliseum. We played in Oakland Coliseum.
Could be right. Yeah, I know it was in the area though.
It's a long time ago, Tim.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I remember watching those games as a kid. So yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I was selected captain by the team, by my teammates, which was a big honor for me. And wound up, I kicked a record-setting field goal. I threw a record-setting touchdown pass, and wound up getting most valuable player of the game. And then the following 2 weeks, played in the Senior Bowl, was selected to play in the Senior Bowl. Again, the same scenario, I think, because of the scouts wanting to see me against the big-time competition. And again, by my peers, I was selected captain of the team, and was most valuable offensive player. Jack Youngblood was the most valuable player, I think, or defensive player. And then that just kind of was a springboard for me to being kind of mentioned in public, where people kind of recognize the name. And then being drafted in the 3rd pick in the 1st round of the first year of the quarterback, when you had Jim Plunkett, Archie Manning, and then myself as the 3rd quarterback.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, not only were you noticed, I mean, you jumped onto everybody's draft board. I guess the question there is, would you, looking back, would you say that those 2 performances in those all-star environments, did that vault you in, or did certain scouts already kind of know, that you were kind of a diamond in the lower school type rung?
There were several scouts that were at our practices and at our games that we knew of, that from a lot of teams. I mean, if you've got a good scouting department, they know where the talent is, and they knew about me, and they were aware, and they just they wanted to see me against the big time college competition, which I excelled, and that was my claim to fame, I guess you'd say.
All right. Well, describe to me being okay. Did you ever envision when you were in college that you would be an NFL draft pick generally, and let alone the 3rd pick overall, and these quarterbacks, right? I mean, you're talking about 2 Hall of Famers there, and Plunkett and Manning. Wow. I mean, did you ever imagine that, or when did you get an inkling that you were kind of like ready for the next level and could perform very well at it?
Well, by playing with those guys in those all-star games and spending time with them, and the respect that they showed me and the respect I had for them, was very, it was rewarding for me. That was kind of the acceptance I needed. If these guys thought enough of me to make me captain of the team, that was a big thorn in my cap. So I was, or not a thorn, but
yeah, feather, something.
You know what I meant.
To put in in the garb that you're wearing. Yes,
right, exactly. So that was kind of the acceptance I needed. I said, okay, I played with these guys. They think I can play. I like, I played well, and let's see what happens from here and take the cards as they fall, so to speak. So and then the draft happened, and then that summer we had to go to Plunkett and I had to play in the Chicago All-Star game. I think it was one of the last years that they played the Chicago All-Star game.
Yeah, describe that for our listeners, because sometimes people don't sort of forget it. But that was a big deal for a long time until really the mid '70s, right?
Yeah, and then it we missed all of our training camp, our pro training camp, pretty much because they had rookie camps. We were stuck in Chicago to play this All-Star game against the former world champions, who were the Baltimore Colts at the time. So again, I'm selected captain of the team by my peers, which I was, very, very, very proud of, because I was playing with my nemesis through high school and college. Not nemesis, but a guy that I got compared to all the time was Jim Plunkett. And, I love Jimmy, and he's done a great job, and, whatever. But anyway, it was very flattering that they chose me over him. And then Blanton Collier calls me into the office the day before the game. And he says, Dan, he said, I've been coaching a long time. And he said, I've never had this problem or this predicament. But he said, I've got to start Jim because he's the Heisman Trophy winner. I said, Coach, I understand that. And I said, I've dealt with this for a long time, and it's nothing new. And I said, plus, I really don't want to get hurt anyway. So I said, I just want to get out of here and go to training camp and start my career. And so that was it. But that was one of the, I don't know how you'd say it, I guess an approval mark from Blanton Collier, who's one of the, Hall of Fame coaches of the time, and was just a really nice guy. And I really appreciated him explaining and understanding it with me.
All right. So tell me about Houston, the Oilers, your what you think you're getting into by being drafted by them. How much did you know about the team? What were you kind of told? Are you going to be sort of a thing that we're going to build around? Because I think it's important to remember that the Oilers were coming off of a quite successful run in the old AFL, and were one of the teams that made that successful merger. But that was only 2 years removed from when you were drafted, right? So the 1970s first NFL season of the Oilers wasn't all that great. They were 3-10-1, and here you come. What's your thinking, or are you like dreading this kind of environment, or are you thinking like, hey, this is exactly the kind of place I want to be because I'm raring to go?
I was just, young, ambitious. I just wanted an opportunity to play and show my wares and just take the chips as they fall and just see what happens from there. I realized it was going to be a tough road to hoe because, when you a high draft pick, you're drafted by the worst teams in the league. Plunkett, Manning, and myself had to go through those tough years where we got the crap knocked out of us. And, a lot of lasting injuries probably came from those early years. But then, the team, we tried. The second year we were 1-13. The third year we were 1-13. And I was really kind of wondering if I made the proper career choice and maybe should have called the Mets and see if I can go up there and still pitch while I still had my health, because I took a beating, and I know everybody else did too, but I took a beating down here, and it was not just from the opposing teams, but the AstroTurf down here was the first of its kind, and it's the worst crap to play on in the world.
No, it's like fuzzy concrete, right? I mean, maybe.
Well, it was basically on graded and rolled dirt. Sometimes you'd run out in the field and you twist your ankle because you got in a pothole or something. But it was a nightmare. And when you got hit, and naturally back then, they not only hit you when you were standing up, but they drove you into the ground. And when you hit that ground and that 265, 70-pound lineman is on your, pounding you into that ground, you feel it. So it contributed a lot of injuries in my career. No question about it.
So let's get into a little bit about that. And then I want to sort of get into some of the year by year kind of stuff. So let's put it this way. Your offensive line wasn't really all that strong for at least a few seasons, right? So that probably didn't help. No disrespect, but go ahead.
No, 74, Sid Gilman came in and was general manager, and you could see the writing on the wall. He was going to become the coach, and he did. And he made the biggest changes. I mean, we finally had Bill Peterson was not a coach. He was not an organizer. He was a fraud. I mean, I don't even know how the hell he became a head coach in the NFL. He went to Rice, or he took Rice's football program, and they did well, but it wasn't because of him. But anyway, Sid Gilman took over, and it was a strike year, and Sid says, okay, he said, there's only one person in this room that matters. He said, I'm the chief in charge, and it's going to be my way or the highway. And by that, we had the strike had just finished, and anybody that participated in the strike that was aggressive in the strike, he just said, stand up, you, and you out. And he just cut them right there. And he made some trades. He got some people in there. He got Carl Mock, who is my dearest friend to this day, and one of the best centers, smartest offensive lineman I've ever played with in my life, and just a gritty, fiery type guy. And he kind of rallied the troops. And we weren't real, like Bum Phillips said, we're not pretty dancers, but we'll dance every dance. And we had a bunch of bad dancers, but they were fighters. They were scrappers. And then that team started building. And then we got this guy from UT who could run the football pretty well. Can't remember his name, but he was pretty impressive. He carried the football and he knocked people down. And I never saw one man ever tackle Earl Campbell by himself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good marriage, because they respected whenever I put my hand in Earl's belly, or that ball in Earl's belly, he attracted a crowd. And it really opened up our passing game downfield to our wide receivers, which we had good ones. And so our basic, was a simple run offense, play action pass type offense. And, we had, a lot of big play, weren't a lot of high percentage passes, but, when we hit, we struck and we got points, or we got good field position and changed games. And then it just got better from there. And then we made the playoffs and went to Miami and beat them. And then we went to New England and beat them there at their home field. And then we have to go to Pittsburgh and play them. And it wasn't the prettiest day in Pittsburgh. It was sleet and snow and cold.
We'll get to that one. That's a controversial, the one that's still debatable to this day. Let me ask you this.
No, the next year was not that one.
Next year. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Well, the Steelers are just, sorry, that's just burning the right. Tell me about, so 75 Bum Phillips. Tell me about Bum Phillips. What did you know about this guy? And did you ever envision that he would be, looking back, right, somewhat of a transformational figure in this franchise? Because Lord knows it needed it. I mean, to credit to Gilman to at least maybe stabilizing, or who knows why or how. I mean, but Phillips, I think, arguably, right, not so arguably, probably was kind of a catalyst, at least on the field, to kind of get things to the next level. That's my assumption.
You assume correctly. Bum was a motivator with a simple approach to life. If you're doing what you're doing, or if you're working and you're doing what you're doing, you're not working. He said, you're enjoying life. And he said, first meeting he said, I want you all to get to know everybody, get to know different guys. He said, Dan, you and Carl split up and go out to dinner with Curly and Elvin and get to know them better. He said, I want you guys to be a family. He said, because you'll fight harder for your family than you will your teammates. And no truer words were ever spoken, because to this day, I'm very close to all my teammates on the Houston Oilers, and that love will never die. That Luv Ya Blue era was the epitome that this city ever saw in football, and those guys today support my charity for the last 17 years, and they all show up and they all participate and they all are happy to do it. And I'm blessed to have been part of that team.
Can you contrast the style of Phillips versus what you were dealing with Gilman before that?
Well, Gilman was, kind of a hard guy to get to know. And I never really got to know him until I wound up ending my career in Philadelphia. He was the offensive coordinator there, or quarterbacks coach there. And he talked Ramil into bringing me up there toward the end of my career. And I got to know Sid pretty well up there, more so than I did when I played for him. But he was, he wanted it done his way, and, he wouldn't listen to reason. Sometimes he would. And then when he did, there was some kind of breakthroughs with me. And I just said, look, if we did this, we could do this better. And he goes, okay, let's try it. So we wound up having a working relationship that was tentative, but he respected my judgment, and I respected his judgment as well. And we had a love-hate relationship. He was a very difficult guy to work for, but Bum, you loved him. You couldn't help but love him. He was just like a father figure. In fact, after my career, I used to go down to his ranch, and the best days I ever had conversations with him was riding around his ranch in his little ranch vehicle, and not saying anything, just being there with him. And just, he was just a fabulous man.
Tell me about 75, because that's when Billy White Shoes Johnson and Elvin Bethea came sort of into the mix, right? And if there was ever a turning point for you and the franchise at that time, it was that season, right? Because you went 10-4.
Yeah.
I had to think it was kind of night and day from the years prior. And also, I'm also curious too what your health was like then. I mean, had you been just beaten to a pulp at that point as well? Or, I mean, was it only getting worse, or what was your sort of state of physical mind as well?
I was stabilizing, and I just kind of was limited. I could still throw, and I felt comfortable anywhere on the field that we could score anytime, especially with the weapons we had outside, because we had burners that could run by you. And if given the time, I could hit them. And, but we said we brought Billy White Shoes Johnson in, and it was Curly Culp that came in that year, I think, with us. We were on a trade to Kansas City. And Elvin was here from day one. And Elvin was, he was the quarterback of the defense, and well-respected. To this day, he's well-respected and loved. But, he was a leader. We get Curly in there, and Curly was just dominant in this new confusing defense that Bum Phillips developed, called the 34 defense, with 3 down linemen and 4 linebackers.
Sure.
And I mean, it was confusing. I hated him for bringing it in. I was like, because now I'm playing against teams that are doing the same thing, and it's hard to key off of. So it was a learning process there. But Curly was a big stabilizing force in that middle. He could tie up the middle of the offensive line on any team. I don't care who it was, Steelers, Bengals, Browns, anybody. And he could tie up the center and guard and allowed our backers to flow. And then we got, back at 70, we got Earl in 70, was 78, 77, 70, 78. Yeah. And then that changed the whole aspect of our running game. And we were able to run the football 25 times, 30 times a game, and only throw it 15, 12 to 15 times a game.
So that probably lessened some of the stress on you, because I would imagine that earlier on, it was a little bit more about dependent upon you to kind of generate more offense and take more hits, so to speak.
Well, we balanced out whenever I knew that they were going to key on him, I took the responsibility and had, threw the ball and threw it well in those situations, mainly in the playoff games. But, Earl was a factor that was, he was a Hall of Fame running back, and there was no running back like him. The only thing I had fault with Earl is that he couldn't catch. He couldn't catch a cold. And I worked with him. I swear, and I love Earl. I mean, he's
who doesn't? Right.
Yeah. And I just worked with him every practice, throwing balls. I said, Earl, relax your hands. I call them stone fingers. I said, it's not going to hurt you if it hits you, So, and then there was a game against New England, and it was a playoff game. And I mean, there were times that I'd pass him over, and I see him in the route, I'd pass him over because I knew he was going to drop the ball. But then I was getting pressure, and I threw the ball, and he gives it a Gale Sayers smooth hands catch, turns upfield and goes 35 yards. And I go, where has that guy been? But there were times, he had moments where he just didn't think about it. I said, but when the ball started coming at him, you could see his eyes rolling and trying to catch it. But if he could have caught the ball, I said, I'd like to throw it to you 10 yards down the field and let you turn around and run over those little guys instead of having to give it to you back here behind the line of scrimmage 10 yards. And then you have to go through these big guys till you get to those little guys. And he just never grasped the thinking of that. But
you guys didn't make the playoffs in 75, but then again, neither did the Dolphins at 10-4. And
well, we were all 10-4 in that division that year. And it was, the player calculation or the team calculation of stats and all that stuff. And we got aced out. And who was it? We beat Cincinnati the last game of the year, and Pittsburgh sent us all these nice briefcases thanking us for beating them and getting them into the playoffs. And we sent the briefcases back and told them to shove it. But it was kind of a funny deal. But all three, that division I thought was the toughest division in the NFL. I mean, when you had the Browns in their prime, the Bengals, Kenny Anderson, you had, what was his name? Phipps. You had, us down here. That was a damn tough division with, the Steelers and Hanratty. It was good offenses, good defenses.
All right, what's this? Oldschoolshirts.com. Fantastic. You've heard me talk on and on and on about the great folks and the great wares at oldschoolshirts.com. Like the name implies, it's old school and it's shirts, and they put them together, into what they call oldschoolshirts.com. It's like the name implies, but of course we love them primarily for their sports wear. You name the league of the past, you name the team of the past, the chances are huge that they're going to have more than one shirt and different color schemes for things that you may remember from the United Football League or the Major Indoor Soccer League or various flavors of the original XFLs, plural, or the Federal League perhaps, or maybe World Team Tennis, or maybe it was the North American Soccer League, and on and on and on. But hey, it's not just sports. It's also great cultural touchstones and memories from the past. How about the officially licensed Evel Knievel connection? How about collection? Yeah, that's what he's trying to say. Various colleges. How about dead malls of the past? Ice cream parlors, maybe even radio stations that you might remember. Hey, even there's a latest edition of the now old, Aloha Stadium commemorative shirt. All that kind of stuff and more. You will find at least a handful of shirts that you will just transport you back into your past, and you will amaze and impress your friends at the same time. It's oldschoolshirts.com. And we got a promo code for you, of course. Let's save you some dough while you go there. And it's promo code is Good Seats. Good Seats. That's the promo code at oldschoolshirts.com. Promo code Good Seats for 10% off all of your purchases. Hey, P.F. Wilson and your friends at oldschoolshirts.com, thank you for your sponsorship of the show. And now, back to our conversation. All right, I want to take a pause and talk about the injuries and the advent of the flak jacket, right? Because you obviously that's part of the name of your book is a nod to that. But you were a pioneer in helping innovate at the time, something completely novel. Can you give a little background as to sort of how you got particularly involved? Obviously, you were getting tons of shots, not I guess figuratively and otherwise, right? But how did this device come your way, and as a solution and all that kind of stuff? And frankly, what was happening prior to even this? Because I got to think your medical team was, and you were trying to flummoxed by trying to just stay healthy.
Yeah, that was a challenge in itself. I think, at that point in my career, the beatings I took over the years the earlier years were kind of taking their toll and effect. But I wouldn't say I'm fragile. I was fragile. I just, I wasn't as tough as I was when I was 23, 24. But we played the Steelers in the Dome, I guess it was, and I broke 3 ribs, and I broke them in the back, like under your scapular. Okay, those 3 ribs there, which are right in the middle of your back in the back. And this guy comes walking into my, he knocks on the door, comes into my room at the hospital, and he's carrying a brown paper bag, and he's got a guy with a baseball bat. Well, I'm thinking, shit, these guys are the guy. They bet the ranch on the game, lost, and they're going to come in here, pwn me to death, and take me out of here in that bag. And I couldn't even reach up and get the push button for the nurse to come in. Anyway, this guy takes this thing out of the bag, and he puts it over his ribs, and his buddy whacks him 3 times as hard as he could with the bat. And this guy didn't even blink. And I go, wow, I'd like to have one of those. He said, okay. And he left the room. And then I saw him that Tuesday. He comes over to the practice field, and he's got the prototype. The prototype was made out of a Navy SEAL life vest. Have you ever seen one of those? They're a vest, a rubber vest, and it's about 1.5 inches thick. And it's got a series like snake pattern going around and through, and it just these air pockets all over this vest. So when you have an impact at one point, it disperses around you instead of on that point.
It dissipates the force, so to speak.
Exactly. It dissipates the force from the point of impact. So I said, yeah, I'd like to try that. So we tried it, and it was hot, and it was hot as hell, because it was like wearing a jacket to, in the winter where you keep warm. But it was kind of hot playing down in Florida at that time of year, because it's 85 degrees and whatnot. But it worked. I'm not sure it worked as much as the shots that I took before and after the first. Well, before we went out in the field, the doctor shot me 12 times with Marcaine and Novocaine. And then we came in at halftime. We're getting ready to go out for the second half. They did the same thing again, another 12 shots. So, and the doctor's sitting there listening with a stethoscope. And I said, what are you listening for? He said, I want to see if I punctured your lung. I said, how deep did you go? He said, all the way to your lung. And this is like the type of, and I'm not taking anything away from the doctors. Some of the doctors I loved, and some of the doctors I wouldn't trust with a knife in their hand. But this is the one I didn't trust with a knife in his hand. So anyway, I wound up finishing the season with that flak jacket, and made it pretty famous and everything else. But then at the end of the season, I'm over shopping at some mall, and I go to open a door with my right arm, push it, and my arm drops, and I couldn't hold my arm out. Well, my scapular, where they shot me with this Novocaine, there's a muscle called the serratus anterior muscle, which attaches to the bottom of your scapula. And when a quarterback or pitcher or anybody brings their arm back to throw, that that muscle works the scapular around your rib cage and gets it out of the way. Without it working, it wings, and it blocks you from bringing your arm back to your full capacity. Well, basically, they kill that nerve by shooting it so many times with the painkillers. And that really kind of ended my career as far as my ability to throw the ball with the efficiency I had on it before, with the velocity. But I just lost a lot of arm strength, and I had to tape it up and play with it. And it just, I could notice the ball when it let go of my hand. It just, wasn't going with the same zip that it had when I was younger.
Well, how did you honestly? How did you play through all that? I mean, was the Novocaine regimen pretty much through the majority of the rest of your career at that point, or were you trying to wean
No,
yourself
it was
off of
just
it somehow?
it was just that one season for those last 6 games, the 3 games remaining or 2 games remaining, and then the 3 maybe 5 or 6 games, the 3 games in the playoffs.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can't fathom just how difficult and painful, especially coming off of when it wears off of that kind of stuff. Did the flak jacket thing? I mean, you got a lot of attention for that. I mean, I'm guessing in the earliest versions, it was a little cumbersome and a little thick and a little because this was something that's evolved from defense and Navy SEAL stuff and all that kind of stuff, right? Were you helpful in not only bringing it to the NFL's realm, but did you have any input into making it better? And were there people available there to help innovate the product? Were you involved in that process at all? Or were you just a test monkey, so to speak?
There you go, the test monkey.
Okay, but a willing one.
I was promised the guy that invented the flak jacket was a guy by the name of Byron Donzies, who was a scammer and whatnot. I found out later, but he was supposed to give me 15% of the company and for everything I've done and all that stuff. And I never saw a dime one. And that facet of his business, the protection, he wound up getting into thigh pads, knee pads, shoulder pads. He got the whole gamut going and made quite a bit of money. And, I never saw a dime. But yeah,
I mean that's hugely unfortunate. I don't mean to sort of dwell on
it. That was kind of the fortune of my career.
Well, no, but I mean,
I had bad investments.
No, well, you were the face of it, and frankly, you brought it to the mainstream, so to speak. And but look, it also just speaks to just how rough of a game this is still. Arguably, a lot of safety things have come since even you played, but certainly when you were playing, it was. I was going to wait to the end of the conversation for this question, but let me bring it up now. Let's address the safety thing. How do you think the NFL has evolved? And do you feel that you were, and I would make the case that you have been, your I don't want to say suffering, but your experiences arguably have been part of, I think, portions of the NFL standing up and taking notice of things. I think many would argue that there's still a long way to go, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think about safety both then and now in the NFL?
I don't think the NFL gives one caring point about their players at all. And they certainly didn't in the early years with us. There were guys played when we played, you were getting hit and they were trying to get you out of the game. They were trying to hurt you. That's just the way the game was played. Now they make all these rules and they're still hitting. I'll give them the hit, but it wasn't anything like when we played. And the NFL didn't care about the players. They still don't care about the players. They care about the almighty dollar. I mean, you've got the pre-93 players that retired, in 1993 before are the ones that got cut off. And we don't get any benefits from any realistic benefits from our retirement, our legacy funds, and anything else. I played 13 years, and I went through all of those injuries and everything else. I played for 4 different teams, 5 different teams. I don't know how many it was. Anyway, but it just, they don't care. They don't care about the pre-93 players. And that's shameful because we struck and we fought for a lot of the benefits that these guys have today. And I say shame on the NFL Players Association for not taking care of us. And I don't know why they cut it arbitrarily off at the 1993 year. But these guys are getting benefits that we only dreamed of. And they give us a little pittance of a legacy fund that pays us $125 or so for every vested year that we played. We don't get any real medical. We don't get any benefits from dental or anything else. They just gave us, hush money basically. And they're delaying, denying, and wait for us to die. Back when this started, when they had the last collective bargaining agreement, sorry,
Sure.
They cutting us off, but I don't want to say this.
That's okay. Look, we get. I mean, we've had these conversations with folks, say, for example, in the ABA, right? And there's a very similar situation going on there, and the owners kind of bob and weave and that kind of stuff. So this is not an uncommon conversation for us. So feel free.
Yeah. I'm sorry about the fishing for words, but sometimes
that's okay. Hey, look, I fish for words all the time, and you're older than I am. So
yeah. But anyway, when they first did that collective bargaining agreement, we had about, I don't know, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 guys that were affected by it. And now the older we get, the more of us are dying off. So that pool of resources is dwindling, but they don't increase our benefits by any means at all. And how can you just arbitrarily take a figure of $125 or $115 per vested year and add that to your retirement? My retirement comes to about, from the NFL, about $5,700 a month. Okay. Who can live on that? Now, with Social Security, I get another bump for another $2,500, $2,700 a month. So these guys now, when they retire, they've got 401ks, they've got, $1 million funds, and they're benefiting from all that, and they don't grandfather anything back to us. Give us the help, man. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are hurting. I'm not, but there are guys that are hurting that can use that extra money, and they just don't do it. They won't do it. And that's a shame.
Well, why is that? Was it you mentioned the players union? So was this part of one of the strikes concessions, so to speak, and maybe the arbitrariness of 1993 and prior? Or was it just sort of a negotiation thing that gave it away?
So to speak? It was probably both, but the representation that we had, the leadership that we had for the Players Association, they got well heeled. They were paid nicely, and they got out fine, but they didn't take care of us like they should have. And I blame the leadership, and that bodes. It just makes me sick the way they treat the older players.
Well, is there, in your opinion, is there any way that the NFL could somehow, and/or the Players Association, rectify this issue, especially given it seems and a gnawing and an increasing awareness, despite the NFL's efforts to somehow tamp it down, of things like CTE, and we've seen some of the former players who donated their brains and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and that's just one part of it, right? We're not even talking about these other injuries that are, when you get injured, especially in a quote unquote pre-safety NFL, these become chronic, right? I mean, you break ribs, and these are things that and this is beyond just CTE, which is its own hell.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. They could do something about it if they wanted to. They don't want to, because they're making so much money now. I mean, how much do these guys have to make? You're signing guys to $50 million a year. I mean, I know time passes and the value of the dollar, appreciates over many, many years. But, my first year in the league, I made $25,000 and I punted. I played two positions. And now, a punter makes what, $3 million a year? And now you got your quarterbacks going for anywhere from 35 to 50 million a year. I mean, come on. I mean, there's not that many guys to take care of in the pre-93 class. Show something, show some balls, and give something back to these guys, to us. If it wasn't for us sacrificing our $25,000 and $30,000 contracts back in the day, you wouldn't have the benefits that you have today, nor the salaries that you're having today.
Well, frankly, you also wouldn't have the gargantuan business that the National Football League is today either, right? I mean,
yeah, it's a global.
It's beyond, yeah.
It's global now, so they can't take care of about 1,500 guys.
So I appreciate that insight. Is there any organization or group or something that our listeners and or others can? Is there a fund of some sort, or is there any kind of activity that people can sort of be part of or take advantage of to help these guys, or is it I'm just curious as to like how you keep this alive and forceful on the NFL and others.
Well, the thing is, it should be brought, and it should be the responsibility of the NFL and the NFL Players Association. And it doesn't take a genius to be the leader of the Players Association to have brought to his attention, which has been brought many times to the leadership, that they screwed us and they need to make it right and grandfather it back. At least make the rest of our lives a little bit easier to survive. I mean, I don't think that's too much to ask, especially from the pot that they have to draw from.
Yeah, and especially when a league like the NFL, which seems to be able not to do anything, they can do anything they want at this stage in life, right?
They're doing it.
Especially when they rely on the history of stuff, right? And the Oilers, right, as a franchise, obviously now ensconced in Tennessee as the Titans and stuff. But this is a very vibrant, and I'm going to try to put a nicer spin on the rest of the conversation, Dan. I don't want you to go down this hole too far, but I appreciate that. It's raw and it's important. I think people need the Houston Oilers part of the story. So, and I'll ask the question at the end about sort of steamrolling over this history. But I think a couple of generations, even today, still, the Luv Ya Blue 1970s story of the Houston Oilers and your ascendance, right? You mentioned Earl Campbell coming in 78, et cetera. You guys were playoff bound. You were in the mix in a number of seasons. I mean, you were a playoff contender, but maybe you can describe for our audience what the lead up and the feeling was in Houston at that time with the fan base and the team and this whole Luv Ya Blue phenomenon, which from where I was growing up in northern New Jersey, I knew about it, and I even knew the theme song. I knew the Houston Oilers #1. Now, who wrote that? I don't know. But I know how to sing it if he really pushed me. But that was an amazing. I mean, it was amazing to see. I was a New York Giants fan. I mean, it's like, wow, that's cool. I wish we had that here.
Look at them. The ice blue pom-poms waving. Brazil coming off the field. You couldn't find a better atmosphere anywhere, intercollegiately or professionally, for a football game.
3 timeouts for Houston. The ball, 25-yard line. Yes, Frank.
All right, Frank, I think the call here is he's got to pass the ball. Maybe a play pass action. The run has got him nowhere. He's got a chance to score. He's got to open it up.
Trying to run against the best running defense in the league today has been fairly ineffective. Going for Burrow. Touchdown. Kenny Burrow. They told us he would not start. Could play. He has a very sore tailbone, injured a couple of weeks ago. He scores for Houston suddenly. And Fran Pastorini had some zip on that ball.
Well, I do believe now his arm as well. This is an absolute great throw. He's got good protection, as you see. He had to put the ball on the line. He did. You see 2 defensive backs are going to be sandwiching Burrow. The ball gets in. Burrow concentrates on the ball, makes the catch. Great throw by Pastorini for the touchdown.
And the other big part of this story, this remarkable crowd with their cards being held up, Luv Ya Blue, and any minute maybe the Houston fight song. It seemed almost inevitable the way Houston's been playing.
Tony French conversion. Good. Oilers on top, 7-0. For the Oilers, they're trying to draw to a tie with Pittsburgh tonight.
All right, we're behind Pastorini here. Watch, he doesn't have much room down there to throw the ball, but he gets it into Burrow. Burrow slowed up a tad to get himself in position to catch the ball, and he did. Great concentration by 00.
Boy, there he is. He's been around 10 years.
And his back hurts.
That was his 42nd career touchdown, and I told you about that severely bruised tailbone. He was even questionable tonight.
Another interesting, oh, look at that crowd. Here's the fight song. Listen.
The carnival atmosphere. Fritz will kick off deep.
The thing about it is that people remember us losing in 78 and coming back to the Astrodome, and they see the footage. They have it on the internet now. We're rolling into the stadium with these buses and the limousines and everything else. And, there's 70,000 people in the stadium. What people don't understand is 30 miles away from the airport, from Intercontinental Airport, all the way down JFK Boulevard, which is the exit to the airport, down to the Beltway, down to I-45, south to the Astrodome. You couldn't find a parking space coming out of the airport, either on the median or on the side of the road. Okay? 30 miles of that. And there were no vehicles on either side of the road except our motorcade of buses, police escort, and limousines.
We landed that airplane, and all the way from the airport to the dome, that's about 20 miles. They had cars parked on the boulevard all the way, cars parked on the side of the road, people in the yards, on the front porch. And then when you got to the dome, there was at least 20,000 people outside that could not get in, and they tell me there was 80,000 people inside. Now that's for a team that lost. What do you think they've done to win one? When they opened that ramp, when that thing came up, and the noise was just unbelievable, and we drove those buses in there. I mean, players were crying, coaches were crying. I mean, it was a great show of emotion and love for a team, and it's something none of us will ever do.
Houston Oilers, we're gonna hold the rope. Yes, we're the.
1 year ago, we knocked on the door. This year, we beat on the door. Next year, we're going to kick the son of a in.
Now, the whole city turned out. They turned out, and it was 12 o'clock at night, 12 midnight, 11 o'clock. And this whole city showed up to show their appreciation, because they went through it too. I mean, we went through it as players. I mean, we were a miserable team to watch those first 3-4 years, but we hung in there, the few of us that were able to stick around and kept fighting. And I'll tell you what, those fans were just as important as any offensive lineman or defensive tackle that we had on our team, or running back or receiver or whatever. Those fans were the greatest fans in the world. And every time I talk about them, I get choked up and I get goosebumps. But they don't realize, the ones that were there at the stadium, they didn't realize all the people that were outside the stadium all the way cheering us on coming into the Astrodome.
I think the real national pivot to understanding what was going on in Houston was that, I don't know if you remember this Miami Dolphins Monday Night Football game at home.
Yeah,
it was November 20th, I think, in 78.
Yeah.
And you guys won, and it was just, packed, of course. And they had these pom-poms and stuff. And I think that was really when I think, fans around the country were kind of like, wow, there's something going on down there. And man, oh man, is it something.
It was. And that was Luv Ya Blue. When I remember coming out of the tunnel, I was the last one to be introduced. And I looked up and I saw those pom-poms and placards. And I go, man, what is this? These people are going crazy. And then, the better we did throughout the game, the louder they got and those pom-poms waving and everything else, it's kind of, it's not as threatening to look into the stands and seeing powder blue and white pom-poms as opposed to looking at the terrible towels in Pittsburgh, the yellow and black. But those fans were just waving those pom-poms and those placards, and just as proud as we were to be part of the city's tradition.
Tell me about losing those AFC championship games in 78 and 79 and to the vaunted Steelers. I mean, I think Bum had said something along the lines like he kind of said, I think there's a quote saying he was like, a year ago we knocked on the door. This year we beat on the door. Next year we're going to kick that son of a bitch in and all that kind of stuff. The fans certainly were backing you. Did you feel that 1980 maybe was going to be the year? And tell me sort of those. I mean, it seems to me for you this would have been sort of the highest point as a player on this team, and given all the momentum and the opportunities and stuff, and then seemingly it all of a sudden wasn't come 1980 season.
Yeah, and well, the 80 season, the 79 season ended in 80, and the 1980 season, the Raiders, Oakland Raiders, won the Super Bowl, and unfortunately, Staver was traded for me here, and I went to Oakland and broke my leg. And again, here comes Jim Plunkett, who was kind of considered washed up at the time, takes over and leads us to the Super Bowl and wins most valuable player and all that good stuff. And God bless him. He, but I have to say this as a man of pride. If I hadn't hurt myself, or if I hadn't broken my leg, I think I've been in that position, but that's neither here or there.
Before you go further, I'm sorry, do you think you could have done it with Houston that year, and maybe a little bit as to why you got traded in the first place, especially given the success over those 2 seasons?
Yeah, I do. I think it was a mistake and a misunderstanding of that trade, and it's covered in the book. But, the year before, the 79, when we lost and I was injured and all that stuff, and I played horribly in the playoff game. I threw 4 or 5 interceptions. I don't remember what, but, playing in the slush and everything else. And I went to Bum after the season and I said, look, if I'm the problem, trade me. I said, I don't want to hold this team back or this city back. I said, but if I'm not performing to what you want, trade me. And he said, Dan, just calm down. He said, you got that Irish Italian blood of yours all going now. He said, don't worry about that. He said, and so I was pushing him a little bit. I said, don't, we're friends. We'll always be friends. Just don't worry about that. And he said, I'll make you a deal. He said, if you feel the same way after next season, he said, I'll trade you anywhere you want to go. I said, okay, fair enough. Because I knew if I was going to be there, I thought we were going to win it that year. I really did. And we should have.
I think a lot of people did, especially 79 with that controversial call, right?
That call. That's why you have instant replay in the game today.
With a minute and a half remaining in the third quarter, the Oilers 6 yards away from a tie. It is Renfroe, touchdown, or is it? Out of play. A late call. The official did not make any signal, and now apparently has said no touchdown. He did not signal.
I don't think he could see the play. He looked down the end zone line to ask a call from the other official. He did not get a call. The officials are meeting now. They're trying to get the players out so they can talk about it. They may have to get a decision from Jim Tunney.
Well, we're going to see it on the replay, and we'll be able to decide whether or not Renfroe got his feet down in time. It was a tough call, and this might be a spot where an instant replay would be important.
Let's see if the feet come down. Now he's got the ball. He does clearly get inside.
It is a touchdown.
No question about it.
It was not called one, but there's no doubt that was a Houston touchdown.
Well, they haven't made a final decision in the end zone. They're still down there talking about it. Now, there's no question about this. He's got control. He has both feet down clearly in the end zone. It is a touchdown.
Of course, the officials do not have the luxury that we enjoy of seeing that instant replay. The man on the spot didn't see it, so he couldn't call it. And now the Oilers are denied a touchdown. Oh my! Bum could just eat that cowboy hat.
The feet, 1, 2, clearly down. There's not much question on. There is no question on that one. It's a touchdown.
But the score remains 17-10 Pittsburgh. It's second and goal at the 6-yard line.
That play changed the game. It really changed the game. But neither here nor there, we didn't benefit. Pittsburgh did. You just don't beat Pittsburgh in their home field. But anyway, that after losing that game, and I had a ruptured groin that I missed the game the week before against San Diego, and Bum comes up to me, he says, can you play? I said, I can play, but I'm about 60%. He said, well, 60% of you is better than 100% of what I got. I said, well, then I'll play. And I said, look, guys, I can't move. You got to keep them off me. I said, we'll try to throw the ball in rhythm and start picking them apart with shorter passes. We were controlling the game. And it was, if we make that touchdown, I swear we would have won that game. But that ties the score late at the end of the third quarter. So now we got to go, and our defense is playing just as well as their defense played against us, playing against Pittsburgh, against Bradshaw. So I felt if we could just get there and control the ball and take our shot when we needed to take it, we'd win. And I was convinced of that. But then when that was taken away, it just ripped our guts out. And now we got to play catch up. You don't play catch up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in their home territory and make up 4 points or whatever it was that we had to make up. And we weren't strong enough to do that because we had to come back. But I felt if the game was tied, we could have held them in check and driven the ball enough to control it, in a couple of drives and get a shot at a field goal or a touchdown or something. But I really believed that we could win that game. But it's neither here nor there. And all the Pittsburgh fans are sitting here listening to this, laughing their asses off, saying that. But it's true. It's what we all felt. But then after the game, Bum comes back to me on the plane on the way back. And I'm now trying to figure out, how can we beat these guys other than carry guns out there and shoot them? But he came back and he said, Dan, he said, I'm so proud of you. He said, you're a warrior. I love you to death. You just, your favorite son, yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden he says, you still want to be traded? And I went, huh? I didn't know what he meant. And I mean, I was like shocked. I go, what's he ask? Why is he asking me this now? Am I the problem? I mean, all these thoughts running through your head. Plus I had a few scotches in me. So I said, well, I guess so. He goes, okay, where do you want to go? I said, West Coast. I mean, I didn't care. I couldn't believe he was asking me that. But then I did and I didn't remember our conversation at that time. And then years passed and I said, why did you ask me that at that time? He says, because I didn't think you'd say no. I didn't think you'd say yes. I said, well, Bum, we could have talked about it the following week, but he made his mind up. He said, well, if he's going to trade for somebody, he wanted to trade for Stabler. He liked Stabler, Southern boy, Alabama, ties with Bum's coaching with, all the people at Alabama. And, Snake just didn't have the firepower to keep the threat deep because our defense just clamped down the receivers all day. And we had some shutdown corners on the Raiders and Snake just couldn't get untracked. But he was a possession type passer. I wasn't. I was a deep threat and that they needed a deep threat. And that I think would have happened. I really do believe that we'd have. If I'd have stayed there, I really felt that we could have won it.
Well, I guess had to be some solace that at least you got a Super Bowl championship ring the next year.
Yeah, but that was the worst time of my life. I tell you what, I didn't feel a part of that team when I got hurt. They cheered me when I carried from the field. You're sitting there with a broken leg and they were glad to see me out. So it was hard for me I had a rough reputation down here in Houston. You either loved me or you hated me. Okay. When I went to Oakland, nobody loved me. Everybody hated me because I replaced the Messiah. Ken Stabler was the Messiah of the Oakland Raiders and he earned it. And, I'm not taking anything away from that, but, give me a chance, just give me a chance and I'll come through, but I just never got that full chance.
All right. Well, I got two sets of questions to sort of round out our chat here. This has been awesome, and I appreciate it very much. So, one is I want to sort of corral the football career thing, and then secondly, I want to kind of talk about your alternate life because it's very, very colorful, and obviously we got to tell people to get the book if they haven't gotten it already because there's lots of great stuff in all of that stuff. But first on the football front, so obviously as you're getting older, clearly the injuries got to be just piling up, so to speak, and just, making themselves known on a more regular basis and stuff. But I mean, you certainly had some good opportunities with the Rams and the Eagles near the end. Was there ever, but this was also in the early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Was there ever a conversation, an interest or whatever about this USFL thing that was bubbling up at the time? Or were you just pretty much done?
Yeah, the conversation came about, but after hanging on with the Eagles, I realized, I'm done. I'm not a guy that's going to hang around. I had other interests at the time, things I could do, and plus I was going through a fight with Al Davis on my contract, which was a guaranteed contract, and he never paid me, and finally had to go to Supreme Court and won, and still never got paid. So that kind of bankrupted me and ruined, it was I left football with less money than I came into football with. So I'll never forgive him for that. But he just had a vendetta. He wanted to ruin me, I guess, because I embarrassed him because he made the decision to trade for Stabler and me. And I let him down because I broke my leg. I don't know. Who knew what Al was thinking?
Well, Al is always a difficult person to figure out, and you wouldn't be the only one that got sort of burned and or whatever by Davis and et al. Right? So,
no, there you go. I'm one of the many.
Well, okay. Again, I don't want to go down this divot here because there's so much life so tell me now about this, your parallel life, right? So loved you or hated you. I think everybody in Houston there's obviously a reason why you're still revered in Houston, right? Because you gave it all to this Oilers franchise. And I think everybody feels that's one of the pillars of being synonymous with the success of that team, especially in the latter part of the decade. But tell me about your lifestyle in the 70s. I mean, you were racing hydroplanes. You were drag racing cars. You were even an actor in a couple of movies. Tell us about those. Do you remember any of those, or were those blips in your life? Do you remember any of that?
Unfortunately, I do remember.
Okay. Well, they're also easily found now in streaming services. So, I mean, for our audience, we gotta see these things.
Yeah. The drag racing didn't really come about till after my career. And that was about a year or two after my career. But I did boat racing. I did drag boat racing in Blown Jet, which was the fastest boats in the world. And we set the world record, which held for 4 years after I retired from it. And then I did a little acting in Hollywood. My first wife, June Wilkinson, was, well-known actress, and made some introductions and kept prodding me to get in and do some things. We made a movie together, which is my first taste of acting. And then you want to
call out the title, huh?
Killer Fish. Or no, what the hell was it?
It was Weed, wasn't it? Weed.
Weed. Yeah. I was a drug smuggler, and she was an undercover agent.
Perfect. Great typecasting.
Yeah, right. So then I got on some TV stuff, and after I got released from the Eagles, I came back to, I don't know why, but I came back to Hollywood because I guess that was the last place I was with the Rams. And then I had Tim Rossovich, a buddy of mine. He was doing some acting. I knew some producers from years past and directors and some people at Universal Studios. And so they encouraged me to take some courses. So I took some acting courses and read for some parts, and got some BJ and the Bear episode, and got Love Boat, or I think it was a Love Boat. And then I don't know, some other ones, but it wasn't made for me. In fact, one thing was kind of interesting. The series Cheers, I read for that, and I guess Tim Dance, he obviously got it, but they called me back, a second calling, to read again for it. So it was kind of between he and I. It was kind of interesting.
So that was the Ted Danson character is what you read for, huh?
Yeah, Cheers, the bartender.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, that could have taken you in a whole different direction.
You think?
Wow.
But it wasn't meant to be. So I got into drag racing and had fun doing that. But it was, if you want to go broke in drag racing or any kind of racing, just start with a large pot of money and you'll piss it away real quick. But it lasted a few years, 5 years or 6. Won a national event, which I'm staring at that trophy right now, which I'm very proud of. Won the Southern Nationals with a crew. In fact, I had a buddy of mine that was on the crew, just left here today. He stopped by as he's driving home from California, spent the night, and we reminisced about the year's drag racing. But those were good years. I enjoyed the drag racing community, the competitors, the fans. They were just really fabulous people, and welcomed us with open arms, which I appreciate. And and then that ended, and then I had to get to work. So I started working for I worked for a company called Turbine Metal Technology, which is a metallurgical company out in California. And then I got into law enforcement technology with DataWorks Plus with my nephew, and then even sold cars at a Lamborghini dealership down here. I did everything.
So let me ask you one last question on the drag racing stuff. Do you still follow it? And how did your past injuries play into it? Because I got to imagine that wasn't necessarily the most comfortable experience going down the dragways.
Actually, it was for me. I enjoyed it. I loved. I mean, the speed is wonderful. Now, there are things that can happen. You know, you crash the cars, and a lot of bad things can happen. But you know, we fortunately didn't have that. You always kind of prepare yourself. And there was one instance in Gainesville where I blew the engine up, and it literally blew out the rear tires in the car, and I felt the hump. And the first thing you tell yourself, whenever you're in a situation, hit the chutes. And I hit the lever for the parachutes, and I felt the car kind of skid to the right, and I see the wall coming up in my left. I'm getting ready to hit it at about a 45-degree angle, and then as soon as the chutes deployed, boom, it straightened out the car. So, and then I came to stop. You know, I didn't have any brakes because I had no tires, and I'm skidding on the oil pan of the engine, and just waited for it to stop skidding, and then got out. And wasn't much of a fire because everything was blown off. The heads were blown off. The blower was blown off. It was a good explosion, they said. But no, I felt safe in the cars. You know, you have the ability to, you know, hit the throttle or get out of the throttle if it's not good. So I was fortunate. I enjoyed it.
I think your entire career and life has been fortunate, right? I mean, we obviously there have been. I mean, we all have our challenges, right? But I mean, the idea of, you know, you are a pillar of an ascendance period of time of the NFL. You're a legendary player. You're revered in Houston. You had quite a life off the field as well, and you're still around to talk about it, which is amazing. And I'd love to know, and I'm sure our audience would like to know, some of the things you have your hands in now, besides talking to silly podcast guys like me. Do you have another book in you, for example? And also tell us about your food thing and the rubs, because I got to get me some of these. My daughter is now she's going to be a senior at TCU. Texas, a whole new experience for we Northerners and Midwesterners. But the introduction to barbecue and the importance of rubs has been certainly been made important to me. So I'd love to hear more about that and how you got involved in that and all that stuff.
Well, the rubs came about through a restaurateur friend of mine in California, Lee Donabedian, and his family and my family background in the restaurant business. And we made this spice, and we called it Texas style rub, and it's damn good. And we wound up making a garlic and herb spice, and then we had a hickory flavor of the Texas style. But we won some competitions, and it became very popular. But it's a tough business, and we're trying to figure out how we can get on this information media stuff on the internet through all these websites and such. But trying to get maybe a podcast going like yourself and doing some cooking and promoting the product better and getting more awareness out there, because you know you're kind of limited when you start doing your own websites. If you don't have the expansion, you don't have the money to do it, you know, you're not going to get heard from. But hopefully we'll be heard from a little bit more here in developing that. But it's a hobby kind of thing. But the big thing I'm doing now that I really enjoy the most, and that's working with a charity called Be an Angel, which helps special needs children with adaptive care and equipment to help improve their quality of life. And I've been doing that with them for the last 10 years. I've been their chairman of the board 6 of those 10 years. And we're growing, and the more money we make, the more kids we can help, basically. And, if your listeners are listening, please go to beanangel.org, and you can find out all about us there. And we're expanding. We have an office set up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we're looking to expand into the Austin and San Antonio area as well. But the kids are the most important thing for me. I've got a great board of directors that I work with and a great group of employees that do a wonderful job at being Angel, and we have the best volunteers in the world, and it's taken off. We've done a lot of good things, and we've got more good things to come in the future.
That's awesome. And again, that's beanangel.org. We'll promote the heck out of that in the lead up and all that kind of stuff. And on the rubs front, that's dpqualityfoods.com. And yeah, I think social media would be very helpful. Get a couple of influencers, go into some barbecue things and whatever, and showing how the rubs stand out and or add to the flavor and stuff. And I'm sure you could get it directly. Do you have it distributed anywhere besides the website, or are you working on that? Like
we have, we're kind of self-distributed. We've got, we're in the HEB stores here in Texas, and Specs Liquors here in Texas. We were in a lot of other stores, but there's another story there. But anyway, we're trying to get the expansion and the awareness out there, because once we get it in people's mouths, it's the best they've ever tasted. I mean, and it's not just a meat rub. It's great on vegetables. It's great on fruit. I mean, it's got kind of a spicy, sweet tang to it. And it's just, everybody likes it. Once it gets in their mouth, they like it and they buy it.
All right. So all you Kinders fans out there, give it a try, will you? I think you actually like it better. And obviously have the picture of Dan smiling at you as you flavor your foods too is not a bad idea.
Absolutely.
Dan, this has been beyond fantastic. Thank you for taking the time. I hope it wasn't too, onerous. And I know our audience is going to eat this up. And I'm only sorry that I didn't discover. Well, I've only been doing this for about 6 years or so, this podcast and stuff. But as I go deeper into media and those kinds of things, I'm only sorry that I hadn't read the book sooner and discovered the whole story and all that kind of stuff. Do you sense that you have another book in you, or some more stories, or how about the Houston Oilers thing? I mean, you mentioned before that you have a lot of quality friends still from that experience and stuff. You're in the Houston Sports Hall of Fame. I don't know, where do you stand on reunions? Where do you stand on the Oilers' history? Do you think Tennessee and the NFL have done you and your teammates credible memories, or do you think they've kind of whitewashed it?
I think, to be honest with you, I think they're doing the best they can. I think Amy Strunk has done a wonderful job. She's extended an olive branch to try to get some combination of the Oilers, or, camaraderie with the Oilers and the Titans organization. We've had reunions down there the last 3 years. It's kind of weird because, that's our lineage. That's where our lineage goes through. And, we're still Houston. And I wish there was something that could be done to where the Oilers could come back here, at least the name, and be here. But it's a tough situation. I mean, they're arguing about the colors, for crying out loud, between the Texans and the Titans. And it's just kind of a frustrating deal. In fact, I've got a call into Amy Strunk, and I'm going to talk to her in the upcoming weeks. And I just want to, I don't know, I want to see if we can make some kind of niceties here between the city. Because this city the team was built by her father, who was a pillar in this city. Whether you liked him or didn't, he was a pillar in the city, and he made it happen. And the Luv Ya Blue is the best time this city's ever had. I love the Texans organization. Hal McNair and his wife Hannah are good friends. Joanna, the sister, they're great people. They invite us to go to the games and all. I appreciate that, but it's my hometown, but it's not my team. But I pull for them because they are in my hometown.
Yeah, and look, we'd love to, if we can be of help on that front. I mean, we're obviously this is a wormhole of interest, but we obsess about these things because frankly, they're important. They're important to people like yourselves who are part of it. The people that were part of these this dynamic and that period of time and stuff. And frankly, it's also history, right? Which shouldn't be ignored, and warts and all. And it's a really interesting point. We've talked about this ad nauseum, say in the NHL, for example. I mean, like the Minnesota North Stars, right? I think the Minnesota Wild, when that came about a few years after the original team left, yes, to your point, like the official lineage goes to the Dallas Stars, but many in Minnesota like to kind of remember that North Stars thing, and the Wild have done as best as they can a job to try to kind of not necessarily own that, but at least embrace that, because it has to be remembered somewhere, right? And if Dallas is not the right place and doesn't sound like it should be, why not keep it in Minnesota? And in your case, maybe why not perhaps rehabilitate the Oilers name and brand and all that stuff in Houston, in and around the Texans thing, and just part of Houston history. I mean, you look at like the Hartford Whalers in the NHL, right? The Carolina Hurricanes, right? Only recently discovered that they could actually, wait for it, make some money by selling and embracing and maybe having a game every year that tips its hat to the Hartford Whalers franchise. And it remains the biggest selling. It outsells some current teams' merchandise, the Hartford Whalers, and they haven't played a game in 25 years. My point is that a lot of people kind of gloss over this stuff, but you can't gloss it over for people who are part of the mix and remember, and frankly, their contributions to football, to Houston, to the NFL, to your play, all that stuff, right? So it's not an unimportant thing, and it's not trivial by any means. If we can be of help, just let us know. We're here to help.
I appreciate that, Tim, and don't be surprised if I call you.
All right. Many thanks to the great Dan Pastorini. The book came out a couple of years ago. It's a hoot of a read, and it's kind of unvarnished, and I think you'll enjoy it very much. It is called Taking Flak, F-L-A-K, Life in the Fast Lane, by our guest this week, Dan Pastorini. It is available in hardcover form, in paperback form, in Kindle form, and of course, you can get it wherever good books are found. But of course, if you would like to give us a couple of shekels of referral love, by all means, please do so via our website. Go to goodseatsstillavailable.com. Search up this episode numbered 392, and you'll find a couple of convenient links to said book in whatever form you like, and you'll get it as fast as humanly possible. We appreciate that, and you will appreciate it too, for sure. While you're online, check out Dan's great rubs and seasonings for your grilling pleasures. Great on chicken and meat and fish and all that kind of stuff at Dan Pastorini's Quality Foods website. That's dpqualityfoods.com. DP, as in Dan Pastorini, qualityfoods.com, and get yourself multiple sets of the garlic and herb or the Texas style rub containers. You and your taste buds will be glad you did. No referral love there, but it's just it's good stuff, and we just want to get that out to all of our listeners for their culinary tryouts. You can also check out Dan's charity, which we hinted at, called Be an Angel. It's where you can help a child. All kinds of great charitable works done by that organization, and Dan's been the chair of that for quite some time. You can check that out at beanangel.org. O-R-G. There you go. beanangel.org. And lastly, but not leastly, you can also follow Dan's adventures on the socials. I think he's available out there on Facebook, but you could also follow him on X at two places. One is at DP Quality Foods, and the other place is at taking_Flak, F-L-A-K, at taking_Flak on X. While you're online, check out our websites. You saw the website, of course, and our merch section. Lots of great stuff for you there, too. Our socials, let's see. Mostly we are the most active on both Blue Sky, where you can find us at goodseatsstillavailable.com, or on X, you'll find us at goodseatsstill. Everywhere else, you'll find us at Good Seats Still Available. And that includes, by the way, YouTube, where we also post the audio for this show. If you're not subscribed to this show yet, what are you waiting for? Please, by all means, do that however you want to ingest podcasts. We're easily found and discovered and All it takes is a button push or two, and voila, you'll get every stinking episode that we put out there, as well as our library. We have it open and available to everybody. We don't charge extra for any of that. And I'm sure you're going to find some great episodes that will tickle your fancy. You'd like to send us some email, you can please go ahead and do so. We're at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. And again, goodseatsstillavailable.com. Check out the merch section. Great sponsors, great stuff, lots of good stuff. And by doing so, by taking advantage of our offers there, you'll get you'll be giving us a couple of spiffs of love and help us keep our lights on, and we appreciate that. We also appreciate the great Jerry Payne, once again coming through with his audio excellence. Thank you, kind sir. And of course, mighty thanks to you for listening. I appreciate it tremendously. More fun, excitement, and curiosities coming your way next week. Stay tuned to your feeds, and we'll see you then.
Love you blue. You know that we do. We'll always be true, 'cause we love you blue. Yes, we love you blue. Love you blue. You know that we do. We'll always be true, 'cause we love you blue. Yes, we love you blue. Love you when you're passing. Love you on the run. Love you scoring touchdowns. Oilers #1. Love you blue. You know that we do. We'll always be true, 'cause we love you blue. Yes, we love you blue. Love your Houston spirit. Always meet the test. The pride and joy of Texas. Oilers, you're the best. Love you blue. You know that we do. We'll always be true, 'cause we